Hello, students. A very good afternoon. So we are going for the next part of neural control and coordination, where we have to discuss about the brain. So before we start the session, I will launch a technical poll. Please let me know if my audio and video is clear, so we can go on with the class. Yeah, thank you. Is the blackboard visible clearly? No. So what's happening? Can't you see the screen that is shared? Like, can you see the things I'm writing? Yeah. Okay, no problem. So we are okay with the technical things. If the problem persists, please let me know. Whoever has commented that you cannot see. Okay. So before we go on to today's topics, so we have a first question today. When a neuron is in resting stage, that is it's not conducting any impulse, the axon membrane is comparatively more permeable to sodium ions and nearly impermeable to potassium ions. And the second option is equally permeable to both sodium and potassium ions. Okay, impermeable to both sodium and potassium ions, comparatively more permeable to potassium ions, and nearly impermeable to sodium ions. So I'll launch a poll, MCQ poll. All right. So you have a minute to answer this question. What's happening? Yeah. Uh, 1 second, students. Not able to. Okay. Give me a second. Yeah. Yeah. Here is your poll. Sorry, it took a while. So when a neuron is in resting phase, in a non-conducting phase, or it's not passing any impulse, the axon membrane. So you have your options. So please try to opt your options through poll. Did you understand the question, guys? We discussed about this, isn't it? Yesterday. Yeah. So nice. We have the answer. So our time is almost up. I'm going to end the poll. So let us discuss about the answer for this question. Okay. So the question is asked about the neuron's resting phase. Okay. So whenever it's not conducting any of the impulses, so what does it do? So when we talk about its resting phase, I told you that neuron is polarized and it is an excitable membrane. Okay. So if this is your membrane and this is your axon, so what happens is on the outer surface of the axon, that is outside of the axon, there is more sodium, correct? No? Sodium ions, and inside there is more potassium ions. So at this stage, what is happening? Inside there is a particular charge, that is inside it is a lot more negative charge compared to that of the outside, isn't it? So now what happens is in this resting phase, to maintain this, usually what happens is the neuron at the resting phase, it allows more of potassium ions, okay, and it is completely inside, whereas it allows the sodium through the membranes to maintain this balance. Okay, so that happens during the resting phase. Okay, so that's how it is comparatively, here it is, comparatively more permeable to potassium ions and nearly impermeable to sodium ions. So the option is B. Okay, fine. So yesterday we actually started a topic where we started discussing about the human brain, correct? So we already had an introduction about our central nervous system and what it contains, like spinal cord and the brain and the functions of the brain, correct, right? So while we were talking about the functions of the brain, so we understood that our brain is one of the major organs of control and coordination in our body. So it is a master for most of almost all the activities on our body, such as control of involuntary organs, control of voluntary organs. Okay. like sensation, eyes, ears, touch, taste, right? And for example, temperature, the rhythmic cycle of day and night, that is circadian rhythms, right? You're balancing. And moreover, whenever you talk about the brain's function, it is very, very elaborate, like memory, speech, cognitive functions, decision making, etc. So having so many activities, understanding the overall capacity of the brain has been even now the most mysterious topic, because brain is been known to perform so many different things that we are able to not give justification for how it is able to perform those activities. But if you think about most of the things that your body is able to perform and feel and sense or do whatever the functions that either voluntarily or involuntarily, there is a hand behind it, and that hand is coming from your brain. I mean, like, the brain controls those things, right? So let us talk about the brain. So when we talk about the brain is a very soft organ, correct? So it is made up of complex neural connections. So that is why this sensitive organ has to be protected, and that is why it is placed in the brain box called as cranium. So this cavity that is the brain is present within is called as cranial cavity, right? So when we talk about our skull, right, we think our skull is the only protective shield that is there for our brain. But if you see what is below the skull, below the skull there are three layers of connective tissue called as cranial meninges, right? So these cranial meninges, they have a specific properties which help in protection of your brain, underneath your skull. So when you talk about what are these cranial meninges, so you have from the skull, if you start from the posterior surface of the skull, so from here you have the outermost dura mater. You can see here, this is your dura mater, right? And the middle, this part is called as arachnoid matter. And there is the space, there is a space that is filled by a fluid called as subarachnoid space, and the fluid that is filled within this space is called as cerebrospinal fluid. It acts like a shock absorber and it prevents the brain from injury. So and the next one is the innermost layer called as pia mater. So as I said, the subarachnoid space is a space between pia mater as well as arachnoid matter, and it is filled by cerebrospinal fluid. It is also called as CSF. So the ventricles of the brain are also filled within the cerebrospinal fluid. Are also filled with cerebrospinal fluid. All right. So let's go for the brain. So our brain can be divided in majorly into three important regions. If you take the whole of the brain, we can divide it into three major regions. What are those? One is the forebrain, midbrain, and hindbrain. The forebrain is also called as prosencephalon. The midbrain is called as mesencephalon, and the hindbrain is also called as rhombencephalon. Prosencephalon, mesencephalon, and rhombencephalon. All right. So let us discuss about each of these parts of your brain and see what are their capabilities and what are their functions, and what are the important regions that are marked within these parts of your brain. First, we'll start with forebrain, or it's also known as prosencephalon. So if you see the forebrain is the anterior most region of your brain. So forebrain can again be divided anatomically into two major regions. The first region is called as cerebrum, and the second region is called as diencephalon. So we take the entire forebrain and we divide the forebrain into two important regions. What are those two important parts? One is cerebrum, other one is diencephalon. See, diencephalon is a region, where it is a compilation of two important parts of your brain, that is thalamus and hypothalamus. We have forebrain. Forebrain is divided into your cerebrum and diencephalon. Diencephalon is again divided into thalamus and hypothalamus. It's not divided, those are the regions. So when we talk about the cerebrum, when we talk about cerebrum is one of the largest parts of your forebrain. It occupies very large area of your forebrain. See, look here. If you see your cerebrum, and then you can see that there is a, one second. Okay, fine. The cerebrum is present, right? The cerebrum, what is happening? If you see the entire brain, if you cut the entire brain, in a longitudinal fashion, you can see that the brain is like divided into two halves. Okay, so the same way, this entire cerebrum is also divided into two halves. We call them as cerebral hemisphere. Okay, so the cerebral hemispheres are held together. See the left portion of the cerebrum and the right portion of the cerebrum, what is happening? So these both are, held together by the tract of nerves. Okay, this bridge that attaches both left and the right cerebrum is called as corpus callosum. Okay, so what I was telling, cerebrum is one of the largest portions. Okay, so here what happens, if you see cerebrum, the cerebrum can be divided into two hemispheres, left cerebral hemisphere and right cerebral hemisphere. Left cerebral hemisphere and the right cerebral hemisphere, they both are held together by the bridge of nerves. We call it as tract of nerve fibers. And these nerve fibers are called as corpus callosum. You can see here. Okay, this corpus callosum, actually it integrates the left and the brain, left parts of the brain to the right parts of the brain. So that region is called as corpus callosum. Okay, so next we will see the forebrain. Again, when it comes to cerebrum, the outermost part of the cerebrum is called a cerebral cortex. So this is the region that is visible to your eyes. You can see here, right? When you imagine a brain, okay, when you try to draw a diagram of a brain, you usually try to create grooves, okay, and ridges like this on the surface of the brain. So this is the region that has such an articulation or such an arrangement of your nerve tissues. Okay, so this is called a cerebral cortex. Okay, so what is the important criteria? What is the one thing that you can identify from cerebral cortex? If you see a cerebral cortex, what you can see convolutions. What are convolutions? Something like this, there are depressions within the surface of the brain. These are called as convolutions. So these convolutions and depressions which are present, okay, that region is called as was cerebral cortex. So if you analyze the nature of the cerebral cortex, like if you see the cerebral cortex through your naked eyes, so what you can see is the layer kind of looks grayish in nature. Okay, it looks grayish in color. So this grayish appearance of the cerebral cortex come from the nerves, okay, which have no which have no neuron. I mean, like the axon and dendrites are absent. Only the cell bodies are present. Because of the excess neuron cell bodies that are present, okay, that is why it appears grayish in nature. So neuron cell bodies do not have such myelination. Correct? No, there is no myelination. So that is why it looks grayish in color. Okay. So that is why this region is called as the gray matter. So you remember the outermost part of your forebrain, which is also called a cerebral cortex. It has neurons made up of only cell bodies which lack myelin sheath. So that is why this region appears grayish in color, and we call this region as gray matter. Okay. So that other part, when you talk about the inner part of the layer that is below this gray matter or the cerebral cortex, it contains the neurons, okay, which are made up of myelinated sheath. So since myelin is present, which is a translucent, which gives a translucent appearance, and it makes this layer appear whitish. So the inner layer of your cerebrum is made up of white matter. The outer layer is made up of gray matter. Is it clear? So if you talk about the cerebral cortex, okay, it is surprising. There are so many areas that are discovered in cerebral cortex. So we call these areas are 51. Okay, 51 areas are marked on the cerebral cortex. Each of these areas of your cerebral cortex has a specific function to play. Okay, so there are around 14 areas or so, okay, which are highly functional. Okay, so these areas are very, very important in so many functions, such as, for example, there are areas like motor area. So these are the areas which controls your voluntary movement of your muscles. Okay, and some areas are like sensory areas or somato sensation. Okay, so the somato sensation is the feeling of touch, the feeling of temperature, or the feeling of pressure and gravity. All of this is coming from somato sensation. So that is controlled by the functioning. Okay, somato sensation area also controls sense organs. Okay, next one is associated areas. there is a specific region. See, out of 51 areas, we only know the very specific function of only few areas, around 14 areas. The rest of the areas we don't know specifically what they perform. So why is that? Because when you analyze the activities of these areas, they are not just involved in one function, like just like eyesight or whatever. Okay, movement or sensing of height or sensing of depth. Okay, something like this. It's not like that. So what is happening? There are associated areas. These associated areas, they interlink the functions of other areas. Okay, and they're responsible for bringing these coordinative functions. See, for example, when you just smell something, okay, you might get the taste of the memories. Okay, when you smell a particular flower or agarbatti, okay, or a particular perfume, correct? No, or taste a specific food, it brings back a very strong memory. So how is that possible? Your taste buds, your eyesight, and your memory in the past, all of them have to integrate to give you one specific feeling, isn't it? So that is because of the association of several different sensations in our body. That is possible because of the associated areas. Okay, so that is why associated areas are known, not they are known for their, there is no clear fixed function for these. Okay, so they are non-motor in function, and they're responsible for intersensory associations, like, okay, like memory and communication, etc. Okay, so next we will talk about the other areas of your cerebrum. So our cerebrum encloses some of the areas like the integrated activities, which performs integrated activities, right? So the centers of the cerebral cortex, okay, the whole unit of the cerebral cortex are known to control intelligence, memory, judgment, learning, thinking, and articulated speech. So if a person gets injured with cerebral cortex, okay, has an injury in the cerebral cortex, he might be affected in following functions like loss of intelligence, okay, short-term memory, loss of memory, poor judgment, okay, learning disabilities, okay, excessive thinking, depression, articulated speech, okay, like some people you might see that they have no capacity to, or they will lose the capacity of speech. So all this is controlled by cerebral cortex, and the cerebral cortex, if it is affected, these areas are the ones, or these functions are the ones they might lose. So remember the functions of cerebral cortex, such as intelligence, memory, judgment, learning, thinking, articulated speech. Okay. So next one. So if we talk about the other portions of your forebrain, so you have your cerebrum, isn't it? The cerebrum encloses another area within it, and this is called as thalamus. The thalamus region, okay, is a part of a region called as diencephalon. As I said, in the forebrain, we have two regions. One is the cerebrum region, other one is the diencephalon region. So when we talk about diencephalon, again, it can be divided into two anatomical regions. One is thalamus, other one is hypothalamus, correct? So let us talk about thalamus. Now, this is your thalamus, okay? So when we talk about thalamus, it is wrapped by your cerebrum, first thing. And what is the role of your thalamus? Thalamus is like a relay station for most of your sensory as well as your motor impulses. What are your motor impulses? For example, if you have a particular touch or a particular excitement, okay, like your reflex actions. So whenever your reflex actions is completed, for example, when you touch a hot pan or something like that, you come to a judgment, right? Oh, what was this heat, where it is burnt, what you have to do. Okay, all these post-traumatic judgments come from your motor impulses. Okay, so that is why the thalamus acts like a relay station. Okay, so immediately when you touch something hot, we withdraw. Okay, so that is without judgment. After withdrawing, we come to so many conclusions. So that relay happens because of thalamus. Okay, so other region is called as hypothalamus. So if you see the thalamus region, see, you here it was thalamus, isn't it? Now if you check here, just at the base of the thalamus, what is present? Hypothalamus is present, correct? So hypothalamus region is very, very functional. Why? Because the hypothalamus is responsible for so many activities like regulation of temperature, regulation of thirst, hunger, and emotions. Okay. So some of the cells of your hypothalamus, They are made up of special type of cells called as neurosecretory cells. And these neurosecretory cells secrete hormones which are called as hypothalamic hormones. Okay. So the secretions from your hypothalamus hormone, what they will do is they control various parts of your body. One such control that the hypothalamus has on other parts is your pituitary gland. Okay. So some of the regulatory hormones, okay, if the pituitary has to produce some of its own hormones, so for it, the information comes from the hypothalamus. Hypothalamus tells the pituitary, okay, see, you have to start synthesizing this particular hormone, okay, like follicular stimulating hormone. Okay. So when these signals are produced, it goes and controls the pituitary, and the pituitary cells will start secreting these hormones, right? So one of the many curious functions like the sleep, okay, the control of sleep, wakefulness and alertfulness, okay, blood pressure, as well as heart rate are some of the regions that are controlled by hypothalamus. Okay. So now, in case in most of the time you are sleepy, or most of the time you are bored, okay, and you are not wakeful or you are not alert, probably you should blame your hypothalamus, correct? No, because for no reason or for every reason, every possible reason, you are very sleepy. Okay. So did you understand the functions of your hindbrain? Okay, sorry, did you understand the functions of your hypothalamus? So let's go for your next part of your brain, that is your limbic system. Limbic system is very beautiful organ. Why? Because the limbic system has the functions such as emotions. All our emotions like fear, anger, anxiety, depression, okay, happy feelings. So your overall behavior, like sexual behavior, all of these things comes because of your limbic system. Okay. So the limbic system is also called as emotion center of our brain. So let us talk and understand about limbic system. If we talk about the limbic system, so in cerebral hemisphere, there are certain integrated regions. Okay. So these are called as deep associated regions of cerebral hemisphere, right? So this deep association comes from structures like amygdala and hippocampus. Okay. Amygdala, hippocampus, and hypothalamus are the three regions. So all these three regions, what are those? One is amygdala, hippocampus, and hypothalamus. They three combinedly together form one system called as limbic system. And these three integrated lobes, we call it as limbic lobe. You can see here, right? What is your hippocampus? Hippocampus is here, correct? No, this is your hippocampus. Okay. And hold on, I will just move this. Okay. So see, this is your hypothalamus. Sorry. Yeah, here it is more clear. Amygdala, hippocampus, and then you have your hypothalamus. So these three regions, they constitute to form your limbic system. Okay. Now, what is the role of your limbic system? The limbic system, it, as I told, it is an emotional center. So it basically controls the sexual behavior. If you have to get motivated, your motivation, okay, emotions, all your emotions like excitement, rage, pleasure, anger, okay, all of these emotions are coming from your limbic system. Is it clear? Okay. So the forebrain is one of the largest parts. So we started understanding the forebrain from your cerebrum, right? So we divided the cerebrum into right and left hemisphere, correct? So in this right and left hemisphere, we told that there is a point of connection, and this is called as corpus callosum. That is a tract that connects right and left hemisphere, correct? So next, when it comes to the cerebrum, one of the bigger part of the cerebrum is your cerebral cortex. How do we identify cerebral cortex? It has convolutions and depressions, which are made up of cells which has only the cell bodies, and they do not have myelination. That is why they appear gray in color. We call it as gray matter. And the inner part of your cerebrum is called as white matter, and they have myelination, correct? So again, when we talk about cerebral cortex, it is one of the largest areas. It controls many of the functions, right? So it is divided into several lobes and areas, correct? So when we talk about these areas like motor areas, somatosensory areas, or associated areas, they're responsible for the so and so functions that we already discussed. Okay. So when we talk about other integrated activities of your cerebral cortex, Intelligence, memory, judgment, learning, thinking, and articulated speech are some of the functions that are performed by your cerebrum. Okay, you can see here the forebrain is divided into frontal, parietal, temporal, okay, occipital, and insular. So these are all different lobes of your forebrain. Okay, so when it comes to other parts, okay, one second. Yeah, when it comes to other part of your forebrain, so below your cerebrum encloses one more area called as thalamus, and thalamus is a relay center and it coordinates for sensory and motor impulses. Below the thalamus, there is a region called as hypothalamus. Hypothalamus has many functions such as feeling of temperature, thirst, hunger, as well as emotions come from hypothalamus. And the hypothalamus secretes hypothalamic hormones by neurosecretory cells, and it controls pituitary hormones, and it is also responsible for controlling sleep, wakefulness, blood pressure, as well as the heart rate. Okay. And another primary region of your forebrain is your limbic system. It is an associated system, such as it contains deep structures like amygdala, hippocampus, as well as hypothalamus. So these three combinedly together form one lobe called as limbic system or limbic lobe. So limbic system is called as emotion center. It is responsible for sexual behavior, your motivation, excitement, and all your emotions. Okay. So next one we have to go for is the midbrain. So when it comes to midbrain is also called as we discussed, it is called as mesencephalon. So where is the location of your midbrain? Midbrain is located between two regions. Okay. So if you see the midbrain, okay, hold on. Yeah. See, if you see the midbrain, it is located between the thalamus, okay, it is located between the thalamus or hypothalamus and the pons. Okay, sorry. So if you see the midbrain, correct now, this is the pontine region. Okay, this is your pontine region, and this is your hypothalamus. Correct now, this is your hypothalamus. So the region between this hypothalamus as well as pons is called as what? The midbrain region. So when it comes to midbrain region, there is one characteristic feature of the midbrain. What is that? A canal called as cerebral aqueduct. Okay, a canal called as cerebral aqueduct. You can see here. Okay, so a canal called as cerebral aqueduct. So this duct actually runs through the midbrain. Okay, it runs through the midbrain. So that is one of the characteristic feature that you can use to recognize the midbrain. Okay. So now what happens? Usually these centers of your midbrain is responsible for control of visual reflexes. That means your optic lobes, right? Your visual reflexes, as well as the posterior pair of your midbrain is responsible for auditory reflexes. That is your hearing ability and the visual capabilities are coming from your midbrain. All right. So again, when we talk about the last part, that is the hindbrain, it is also called as rhombencephalon. The rhombencephalon actually consists of three important regions. Those are called as cerebellum, pons, and medulla oblongata. Okay. So each of these regions have their own specific control and coordination again. Now, when we talk about these two, midbrain and hindbrain, both this midbrain and hindbrain together, they are called as the brain stem. You can see here, right? So this brain stem contains, this is the midbrain and this is your hindbrain. Okay. So this is called as the brain stem. So when we talk about the cerebellum, what is cerebellum? As I said, your midbrain is your hindbrain is divided into three important regions. Those are cerebellum, pons, and medulla oblongata. So if we talk about cerebellum, it is also called as little cerebrum. Okay. So why it is called as little cerebrum? Again, it has some of the convoluted surfaces, and these convolutions are because of the presence of more neurons, or you can tell that this region called as cerebellum, see, you can see that there are demarcations on this, no? So that is because it is accommodating, or it is allowing more of the intervention of your neurons, or more neurons are present in this particular region. Okay. So what is the role of your cerebellum? It controls muscular activities and it provides body equilibrium. Okay. So basically your hand and leg coordination. Okay. And your ability to sense your fingers and move your fingers in different directions. Okay. Change of angle of your body. All of this is coming because of your coordination that happens in your cerebellum. All right. So next one. Other region is called as pons region. region. Okay, it is also called as Pontine region. Okay, so when we talk about pons is very, very important. Why? Because the pons are doing many coordinative functions like controlling of respiration, rate of respiration, okay, activities of eyes, ears. See, if you don't have proper ears, you will not be able to balance properly. If you don't have eyes, then again you have no visual or auditory sensations. Okay, it is not interconnected, correct? No. So there are instances where you can see what you hear and hear what you see, correct? No. So that kind of integration comes because of the pontine receptors. So what are these pontine regions? Basically, pontine veroli, it consists of fiber tracts, okay, that interconnects different regions of the brain, such as auditory lobes to your optic lobes to your, okay, gustatory lobes, something like that. Okay, it coordinates activities of eye, ear, as well as it regulates respiration. Okay, so this is another part of hindbrain. Next one, the final part of your hindbrain is called as medulla oblongata. Okay, so medulla oblongata is the region that connects your brain to your spinal cord. Okay, it is like a lynch. So medulla has a lot of functions, such as it controls respiration again. Okay, the rate of respiration, your cardiovascular reflexes, such as if you want to run, your heart rate has to increase. If you're afraid, your heart rate increases. If you have an adrenaline rush, your heart rate increases. So these reflexes are called as cardiovascular reflexes. Okay. Next one is gastric secretion of your gastric hormones and gastric enzymes. Okay, for the digestion of your food, movement of your food through your alimentary canal, that is the peristalsis. All of them are controlled by medulla oblongata. Okay, and some of the other functions like salivation, vomiting, sneezing, as well as coughing are also controlled by your medulla oblongata. Okay, even hiccups are coming because of medulla oblongata. All right. So the other part of your central nervous system is your spinal cord. Okay, so we already know that the spinal cord has a very significant role in your central nervous system, correct? So I told you about a small detail about your central nervous system, what's happening in central nervous system, especially with respect to spine. So that is the reflex actions. All your limbic activities, like your limbs, forelimbs and the hind limbs, your ability to feel the surroundings, okay, and your ability to withdraw your arms or legs according to the situation. All of this is possible because of your spine, because not all the information is relayed to your brain for the processing. Many of the information that doesn't require any processing, and it requires immediate okay, reflexes. So that is all performed by your spinal cord, right? So when we talk about spinal cord is present within the vertebral column, correct? So when we talk about the brain, I told you brain is protected by cranial meninges, right? Similarly, we have spinal meninges where it protects the spinal nerves. Okay. Now, when we talk about your spinal cord, again, the spinal cord contains cerebrospinal fluid. Okay. So in brain, outer regions was gray, inner region was white. Okay, here outer region is white matter and the inner region is gray matter. So when we talk about functions of your spinal cord, it conducts impulses from the site of sensation to the site of your brain. Okay, it interlinks between what is happening at the site where you have felt the pain or whatever the senses you have, and then it gives you one decision to withdraw or do any of the functions that it requires very quick decisions. Next, the same information is relayed between the brain for further decisions, like what happened, what do how much pain are you feeling, what bit you, or etc etc. Okay, so that is happening because of the presence of spinal cord, because it conducts and coordinates impulses from it to the organs, or from organs to the brain. Okay, then it is also a center of spinal reflexes. All right, so this is about your spinal cord. So in the next class we will start talking about from the spinal cord, and then we will go for other organs. All right, such as eyes, ears. We will study their structures. Is it clear, students? So if you have any doubts, you can just tell me. You have like 1 or 2 minutes. Okay, students, we can take the doubts in the next class if you have. So please feel free to, tell me if you have any doubts or any repetition is required, we can do that. All right. Have a nice day. Thank you.